Tamaracaulderrichardson, and I'm your host of the Seeking Heaven show, which is Seeking Heaven, the near-death experience and other phenomenon. Tonight, we have a special guest from New Zealand who also has her own podcast, and I'd like to introduce Kirsty Salisbury. Thank you for being on.
Thank you, Tamara. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, we're going to have a blast. Already the pre-show, we were saying it's the best part. We've had some laughs already. So
we have.
and you know, a lot of it's, trying to pronounce where, Kirsty is from. She's also an INDS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies leader in Auckland. And we were going Auckland, but she said like awkward, Auckland. So we were having a laugh over that. So anyway, she is also a part of the International Association of Near-Death Studies in the Auckland area, as well as she's an ISGO, which is an online sharing groups online facilitator, as well as I am too. But she's also very busy with other things. She is which we'll get into the other part, but she has a show and it's called Let's Talk Near Death. And I've been on her show. She's fabulous. She is terrific. So you need to check that out. That's if you want to find out more about that, we'll put it at the bottom of the at the page there on YouTube so you can see it. But it's www.letstalkneardeath.com. She also has a couple books, A Life by Design and Let's Talk Life Design. Did I say that correctly?
Yep, that's perfect.
I did. Okay, good. I
got the accent right.
And her books are phenomenal. Hopefully she'll be, I would love to see some courses out of those books. Wouldn't that be good? So
yeah, there are a few things in the pipeline. So yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay. All right. So I also wanted to mention that now you've got to see her show, her podcast, and she's doing a lot of other things. And she's also taught how to do your own YouTube and production. It's really quite a lot of work. So she does have courses in that. She's really fascinating. So just, go to her site and you'll see more. But I want to talk about, we were talking about this pre-show that Kirsty was talking about, that she took courses on being a funeral celebrant. And I wanted to find out more, and then we'll go into her near-death experience, which she had at 12. But I wanted to talk about what does that really mean? I don't think we really have anything like that here in the USA.
Yeah, so we over here in New Zealand, we have funeral directors who look after the funerals, but the celebrant is the person that comes and does the ceremony for the funeral. You don't have that over there?
No, but okay. This whole end of life, which we're talking about, end of life care. I think it's evolving here in the U.S. It's probably evolving everywhere, but we used to have the traditional funeral, right? Whatever religious denomination that you were, and that you would have a preacher, a minister, rabbi, a priest, whatever. And then you would have, which would give the eulogy. And in the South, it would usually be, I've been to some, it's all about Jesus. And it's like, okay, it would be nice to hear about the person that just passed. Seriously, sometimes they don't even mention anything, which is a bit odd.
Interesting.
I'm all about Jesus, but it's a bit odd. This is celebration.
Yeah, because you're there for the person.
You're there for the person. It's very
odd. The celebrant is the person that does the ceremony. I guess celebrant comes from the celebration part of the ceremony.
Okay.
The funeral director is more looking after the body and the process of what happens with the body itself.
Oh,
it's the same with weddings. We have a person who's the wedding celebrant. I also am a wedding celebrant.
Oh.
And that's the person who officiates the ceremony.
Well,
so
that makes perfect sense. We should have one.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, the celebrant can do the eulogy, but also family members or people who want to step into that role can do the eulogy. We don't have a lot of set roles within our funeral ceremonies here. They're very open. You can choose a lot of different things, a lot of locations. You can choose what is in the ceremony. So whether you want to have dancing or singing or a music show.
That's what I want.
A music show?
Dancing and fun.
Dancing, yeah.
Actually,
why not, right?
I want a disco funeral. I want Donna Summer and the Bee Gees. Why not?
Why not? Yeah, exactly. Funerals traditionally have been so somber, even the point that we all turn up, we wear black. It's a very depressive type of thing. Over here, this is definitely changing to the point where people are starting to say, dress up in your brightest clothes. We're going to have balloons. We're going to have flowers. There's music. over here, we can put pretty much anything you like into a ceremony. So this is the role of the celebrant, is to create this beautiful ceremony, a little bit like an event planner, I suppose, working in conjunction with the family, with the close relatives, the loved ones, the people that were in the deceased person's life. So that's what the role of the celebrant is here.
Now,
I chose to study and become certified as a funeral celebrant because I'm obviously very, very interested in the topic of death. I am a near-death experiencer. I've had sudden family death. I've been through a few things in that area, which has really, I guess, opened up the conversation for me. I want to create the conversation, a space for that to happen, because I don't know what it's like over there, but we don't really talk about death here until it happens. And once it's happened, it's almost too late because we don't really know how to deal with it. It's such a shock to our system. It's such a shock to our relationships, the family environments, things that are happening around us, that it happens and we don't know how to cope. So I'm on a bit of a mission to open up the conversation before it happens. So I had this idea that I could become a funeral celebrant, not necessarily to run or practice the funerals themselves, but to help people to prepare for their upcoming funeral, which can sound very negative. But I think when we look at death before it happens, there's so much growth and life that can come out of it. So I've actually just helped somebody to write their own funeral. They're alive and well, and there's no signs that they're unwell or anything is amiss. There's no reason to think.
So proactive.
Yeah. So as they go through, and we go through a bit of a process asking, all about the relationships. Who would you want to have speak at your funeral? What do you want to be remembered for? What are the key things in your life? What are the stories, the funny things? How do we celebrate you? And then putting that into some kind of ceremony, which would really reflect the person who's by this time deceased, who's died. But it's thinking about it before it happens. And there's a thing, I believe it's called a living funeral, where people actually conduct funerals for themselves before they're dead so that they can attend them and hear all the nice words about their life and how they impacted the world, because we don't hear it. We're dead by the time this happens. So there's a lot in that. I don't come from a negative space. I don't come from a place of let's dwell on death and loss and grief and ending. They're very practical aspects of it. But I'm all about let's look at death and let's focus on death so that we can actually live the most vibrant, full lives. I'm just I don't even know. So I'm happy.
Okay, so let me put on some, we'll start with that. We'll start with the, go ahead, back to the lipstick. Okay, so go ahead and say there's something called, and matter of fact, there's something called a living.
Yeah, so there's a thing called, I believe it's called a living funeral, where you would conduct your funeral ceremony before you've died. So you'd get everybody around you and actually go through the entire process exactly as if it was your funeral, but you're still alive. So it's this great chance to hear all of these positive things. We stand up in a eulogy, we hear about the life. People give their thoughts and their memories and the great things, the way that you've been impacted by their life, and all these good things that we as the deceased would never hear if we waited until we've actually died before we have our funeral ceremony. So I like to come from it from a very positive stage, very positive angle. It's not about getting trapped in the concept of death or grief or the hardship. Death can be a very, very heavy thing. And in no way am I glossing over it and say death can be all fun and happy. It's a very real thing that happens. And there's a lot of hard time and emotion that goes with it.
Absolutely. A lot of logistics, but it's funny, like we were talking earlier that some church people come in with an agenda, like trying to get membership and hurriedly say people, that's, I've experienced this type of funeral when it's about the person. I will say it's changing a little bit. Like when then my dad passed, he had a life celebration. So
I love that.
And what he did, you're going to love this, Kirsty, you're going to love this. So my dad, he was not very religious, so that makes sense too. He wasn't very religious. At the same time, he had a really big personality. And so he was really into his car. So what they did is they parked his Porsche, his vintage Porsche in the front. and it was a
Oh,
red
yeah.
Porsche. Is that funny? So and then the one thing I was thinking is like, Lord God help us, please don't have all the women that he had a fan club of women. Lord, please, all these old women. And they did. All these old
Oh,
women, girlfriends showed up, and I didn't tell my mom. She goes, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "Because you would act like you're acting right now, and you would act a little nutty." So,
yeah.
I look back on it now, and it's funny because
Yeah,
it was him. It was his
it
big
was.
personality.
Totally. And if you cut a bit out of it, you're not getting that full picture. And it's all about that full experience to celebrate the life and give them the send off that they want. So for me, I lost my father in an accident, and he died literally within a moment, very, very quickly.
Oh, wow.
And what happened through that was we didn't know what he wanted for a funeral celebration. We
Oh,
didn't know his thoughts on things. There was so much. And yeah, there was just so much to sort through in terms of my poor mother and the absolute depths of grief. She's just lost her life partner, her best friend, all of these things that are going on. We're in shock. I was living on the other side of the world at the time, flew back, and we had to put together this funeral ceremony. And we didn't have a clue. We didn't know who we'd want to
oh,
speak. We didn't know what he'd want incorporated. We didn't know what flowers. Did he want flowers? What music did he want? We
oh,
didn't know about things,
okay.
even things to do with his personal belongings. So take it away from the ceremony itself. What things did he want to pass on? What did he have here? Did he have any investments that we didn't know about? Where was his life insurance? Did he have all these things, all these practical things?
Gosh, what
And
pressure.
it was, oh, there was so much pressure. And not just that, you had to turn it around really quickly, because I
Right.
don't know what it's like there, but we generally do
Quick.
funerals within about 5 days.
Oh, yeah, quick.
And so
Hmm.
we had to make decisions just like this. And we're making these decisions going, we don't even know if this is the right thing. There's no one you can ask. He's gone. We can't grieve because we're so focused on getting this ceremony together. And I was watching my mother, and my heart broke for her. She just, what she went through, all of this. And then because it was an accident, there was all of the insurance claims afterwards, and we had to get valuations on things like a hearing aid and glasses and watches
Oh,
and all these things. And I saw her go through so much unnecessary pressure and things she had to do. And I thought this could so easily have been resolved if we'd just tackled this before he died.
now, how long were they married?
Oh, years and years. I've never really thought about that, but we're probably talking about 35, nearly 40
Yeah,
years.
or
Yeah, so
close.
they'd
Yeah,
been
35.
together a long, long time.
Right.
They'd had a fabulous adventure-filled life together. My dad was the king of adventure, which is how he ended up in a plane crash. He was Mr. Adventure. But, I'm kind of proud of him for that. I feel like he went in a really great way, even though I'm devastated and miss him.
Yes.
There
Well,
was goodness to come out. Yeah. So, I mean, we're going down a whole tangent here because I'm
no,
very
no, no,
passionate that we talk
no.
about death
But the thing
before
is,
it happens.
I am so sorry that happened to you, but but you're right. I mean, you think, well, if you had to pass, I asked one lady, I said, how do you want, I don't know how we got in this conversation. I said, well, how do you want to pass? And she says,
Yeah.
I love speed in a really fancy sports car. And I was like, not mine, but okay. Not really mine. I'm more like the lady of the
Totally.
Titanic in my nice bed, older, and just take a nap. And then I'm waking up, hanging out with Jesus, picking flowers. I want mine a little different. But it's funny that
Yeah.
people already in their minds do have a way how they, I find it how they want to pass. And some people they don't maybe like getting sick, but they like the attention of
Mm,
which I personally don't want that attention. You know what I mean? Like I
mm,
would feel
yeah.
uncomfortable. Like don't look at me. I look bad right now, So I don't like the drawing out, but some people might like that, feel that love around them. So, but I love what you're talking about is planning beforehand and what's going on, because so many times it is a shock when someone passes and you're trying to you're in shock, you're trying to deal with
Yeah.
the grief, and then you have people asking all these things of you. We had to plan my dad's funeral, and I'm glad we were pretty much so in unison. There were 4 kids, and I'm glad we
Mm,
were. And it did reflect him. And we even played the songs he liked. He had a very eclectic song thing, but we played like Stevie Nicks to ABBA to whatever. I mean, it was all over the place. And I thought that was sweet, and people were laughing and seemed to have fun. And you wonder, why does it take a funeral or something like this for people to get together and to celebrate someone? Why can't we celebrate someone now? But I think what's taboo, and I will talk about this, which is way bigger than us, and then we at some point we'll get into your near-death experience a little bit. I mean, because I do want to honor that, but I think what's taboo here, Kirsty, is the fact that it's how people, wherever you're from, view death. And generally it's not like the New Orleans style where they have a band marching down the street. And I think that so many people don't feel like there's a higher power or divine creator, that there's a system to things, right? And so many people feel a lack of control in their own life, and they fear, well, if there was a God, they'd be helping me with blah blah blah. Well, maybe they didn't ask, I don't know, but there's a sense of loss of control. And I think that people that are a little bit more spiritual or soulful or whatever, or believes in God, or I don't know what those words are, they tend to look at it as something to look forward to, as an evolution, that death is not death, that it is the beginning of a new life, an afterlife. It is a transition where your soul transitions into another dimension so you can continue to evolve, because we are spirit. We just happen to have a body right now, but this thing isn't going to last forever. And the good news is this place that we evolve to, we usually find our way. And then we end up finding each other again. So, we'll see each other again. So life, is continuous. And even just the whole idea of energy, it cannot be destroyed. But those relationships and that love that we have with people, I think that I think it's a lot of what I hear from people being a medium and so forth, is I feel the living people, they have a lot of regrets, like should have, like, we never played baseball. He never took me there. I never told him this. I didn't share that with him. And there's regrets, or there's a regret, I wasn't there. That's a common one. I wasn't there when they were ill. I didn't know, or whatever the reason being. And that's a common one. So I think shame and regret from the living is usually what happens. But I think that if people realize this, it's a natural part of life.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Absolutely. There's we could do a whole conversation, an entire episode around regret and feeling that shame, hanging on to the regret. We could go there for sure. But I do love, you mentioned that you're talking about love at some point. For me, it's all about love. And I think when we can consciously connect to our actions, that's where everything changes. So that's where I feel passionate about experiencing our life before it's finished. That's connecting with a deeper level, connecting with the love around us, connecting with the people, the things that we enjoy. And that's a huge part in eliminating that regret as well. But you're right, for many people who take the time to get their perspective on what is after this life, do we continue? Where was I before I came here? A lot of people that take the time to focus in on that and come to some answers are the ones that understand that death is not the end, and that there is so much more than what we can see right now.
Well, that's why you have your podcast. That's why I'm doing this. I want people to hear different people like yourself, to get different viewpoints of what, what is death? What is life, quite honestly? Is life what we think it all is to be? And sometimes there's a blurring of lines, when you, people that have, not only in their dreams, but have seen their deceased relatives show up in their bedroom. I mean, that's exactly. People have had experiences, and just the most normal of people that have had experiences where they smell the smoke of the Father or what have you. So there's a blurring of the line there. So I think that
Yeah.
having this conversation is healthy because it's not really about the person that's passed on, because quite honestly, that's one thing that we can be sure about. One day it'll be our time for real, not like oh, a hiccup, oh, we had a near-death experience. And as I always tell people, if you haven't had one, don't worry, there's time yet, because most people just don't, get out of here, boom. I mean, you can, but there's usually hiccups along the way. And I think that there are glimpses into heaven or glimpses into another reality, another dimension. So I want to talk about you before your near-death experience. And I know you were 12, and a lot of mine happened in my childhood, so I get it. But you're still a person, and you're still soulful. So how were you like beforehand when this happened? And you can, go over as much as little as you want to on that. How did that change you? And how did you integrate yourself back into this world? And then who is Kirsty Salisbury now?
Okay, a lot in that. So like you say, I was 12 years old. So I was at a point in my life, I didn't have any firm ideas, beliefs. I was quite young. I hadn't been through a lot of things in life yet to understand who I was. So I potentially hadn't asked the big questions. What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? What am I meant to do? What is my purpose? These things possibly haven't come into my perspective at that age. I was very much a high energy child. I was giving life everything I could. I was very, very into everything. I'm actually still a little bit that way.
I was going to say, you really haven't changed that much.
Yeah, exactly. People always comment on that.
It's a good thing because you're full of life and vigor, and you're positive, and you embrace life like with child wonder, and God bless you for that. More people should be that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's got its down points. I've definitely pushed it too far. I often don't know where the boundary is, and then I've flipped over the boundary. I'm going, oh, I'm here again. I've burnt out again, or I've gone too far. So anyway, I was 12 years old. I was a competitive gymnast at the time, and so I had loads of energy. I was all about getting quite high up in the ranks as a gymnast, and I trained really hard, and I just had no concept that I couldn't get there. Didn't even occur to me. I was just going for it and doing my thing. I was at school, so I was at what we call intermediate school here. 12 years old, I hit my head on the bars in the playground at lunchtime, because I would always go over to the bars and practice my gymnastic skills in my lunchtime. Every minute that I was awake, that I didn't have to be sitting in a classroom at a dinner table or doing some homework on something, I would be jumping on a trampoline. Exactly. I would just be doing some type of acrobatics or gymnastics. So lunchtime, I hit my head and the bar went straight into my forehead. Yeah, I didn't think too much of it. I was like,
were you knocked out instantly, or what happened?
No, nothing. No, it wasn't even that bad. That's the weird thing. I just, hit my head, and so we'll never know whether this is even connected to it. But I remember going, oh, that really hurt. But so what? I hurt myself all the time. I was one of these kids that had bruises up her leg. I've got bruises on my legs from stuff. I'm just that type of person, but clumsy. So I went back to the lunch bell, went back to my class, carried on my day at school, thought nothing of it. Went to bed. That was fine. The next day I was feeling a little bit like, oh, I'm just a bit tired. And I couldn't really work out what was going on. Had forgotten that I'd hit my head, didn't think of it. As the day progressed, I got more and more tired. And then by the evening, I was thinking, oh, I just need to go to bed. So I had an early night, and oblivious of anything really, woke up a couple of hours later, and I had this headache, which was right here. And it was like a laser beam headache. It was a pinpoint headache. And I can't even explain it because it was so specific. And it was so bad that I was literally just, what do I do? How do I manage this pain? It was so intense. But I remember lying in my bed thinking, but it's right there. It's not, Normally when I get a headache these days, it'll be like, well, it's there, you know,
Yeah,
over
yeah.
my forehead
It
or
was
over a big area.
it was very
This
localized,
was a
specific.
very specific, very localized. So then I'm thinking, oh, I don't feel so well. So I actually got out of bed and I was trying to get myself to the bathroom and I collapsed on the floor. And at that point, my body didn't work. So I didn't know at the time, but I was now paralyzed down the left side of my body. So my body had had a stroke and I was crashing about on the floor. I couldn't understand why I couldn't just stand up and use my body. It made no sense. The pathways weren't connecting. I just couldn't work it out. By which time my mother had heard me trying to crash about. I was literally hanging onto the side of the bedpost,
Oh my God.
pulling myself up one-sided, using all those gymnastic skills I could, and then not making it and crashing down because I was exhausted. So I did this a couple of times. So my mother heard the banging about and the crashing on the floor. And she came in ready to tell me off. What are you doing? You know, sort of thinking I was trying to do some gymnastic training in the middle of the night or something like that. So she came in, she found me collapsed on the floor. And then I can remember this so clearly. I can remember her trying to help me, and she helped me through to the spare bedroom where she spent the night with me. And so we're in the spare bedroom and I'm lying there thinking something's really not right. My body's not working. I'm feeling sick. I've got this headache. And then I hear this voice that tells me I can't go to sleep. And I'm thinking, I don't know what that is. A literal voice in my head. I'd never heard it before. I didn't recognize it. But I felt this overwhelming need to obey it, that I had to listen to this voice.
What did it say?
So
really? The voice in your head, what did it say exactly?
it was
Don't
saying,
go to sleep?
don't go to sleep.
Okay.
Don't go to sleep. And I'm thinking, but I'm really tired, because I was getting more and more tired. So anyway, I try really hard. And I remember this voice. I try really hard. I can't do it. I fall asleep. And then I wake up. The next thing I know is I'm in a place of absolute nothingness. So I'm in this void is what I'd call it. There is nothing there. There's even no nothing. Like it's nothing. It's like there wasn't an absence of something. There wasn't something there. There wasn't an absence of anything. Can't explain it. And so I'm in this place, and then I'm hearing my father talking to me, and he's telling me to connect with him. And he wants me to squeeze his hand, and I'm trying to find my body. I'm trying to find my hand, and I can't find it.
You're hearing
So
the voice, but you're disconnected from your body. Like, okay,
yeah.
I'm hearing you. Okay.
And I couldn't connect with him. I never saw him. I couldn't find my body. And yet I didn't not have a body. I can't even explain this to you, Tamara. It's just, it was so
No, I get it. I
indescribable.
totally get it.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
if you're here and then you're in that space, it happened to me in the car, and I'm in a place. It was black. It wasn't evil. It wasn't anything like that. It was just nothing.
It was nothing.
It was just nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, and it was very confusing because last thing I thought, I was in the windshield wedge where my face was impacted.
Yeah, right.
Not, I mean, I couldn't figure out where I was.
Exactly.
Right?
So that's it. People always ask, what type of emotions, what was going through your mind? I wasn't thinking of anything. I was so in the moment. And I remember confusion. That's the only, I don't even know if that's an emotion, to be fair. That's all I remember is.
Right. Well,
why can't I find my hand? Why can't I find his hand? Why can't I see him? He was all around me as well. This is the other thing. He was in me. Like if you can imagine putting a microphone in your ear and it's just on very loud volume in your ear, and yet so far away that I couldn't quite hear it all at the same time. So he was a part of me and yet so external as if like galaxies away from me. So a lot going on that I cannot explain or even make sense of.
Here's a really cool idea. Think about it. Your body's still there, right? And then spirit being, so you're listening with your spirit ears, right? Which may come across not like right now, and then your body's still hearing. So wouldn't it almost be an echo?
Well, yeah, exactly. It could be anything, couldn't it?
Yeah.
It totally could be.
Yeah. Who knows?
So I try and connect with him. And then I feel like I'm going to give everything. I'm going to die for this because I'm not aware that I'm dead. I'm not aware at this time when I'm having this experience. I'm currently on an operating table having emergency brain surgery. So what had happened when I was lying in my bed, I had this pain in my head. I had a tangle of blood vessels in my brain, which the blood pressure had built up. We don't know whether the bang to my head when I was in my lunchtime doing my gymnastics triggered something or just jolted something.
Okay.
But basically, this tangle of blood vessels, the blood wasn't flowing, it expanded, the blood vessels burst. My brain started bleeding, and so I'd had a full brain hemorrhage, and then I'd had a stroke as a result of the bleeding. So at the time when I'm in this void place, trying to connect with my father, but can't find my body, I'm on an operating table and I flatlined. So they're doing the emergency surgery. They can't get to the part. They're trying to cut out this collection of blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
They lose me on the table. So they get out the paddles, they resuscitate me. We're talking over 30 years ago now. So it wasn't like techniques are today. Things were a little bit more dramatic back then. It was a little bit more serious. They get me back. And then they start to do the operation again. So they're thinking, okay, we'll do this again.
Oh.
And then I go again. So they lose me again. And at that point, they made the decision quite quickly. They needed to abort the surgery. It was too risky. They were going to lose me. If they didn't bring me back now, then, you know, who knew what kind of brain damage I might have, what kind of future I might have. So they brought me back. They aborted the surgery, got me back. And the idea was that they would get me stable. They would let me wake up and recover and heal. And then they'd operate at a later date when my body was more up to it. And they had, I guess, more understanding of what they were dealing with within my brain. So this is going on. I don't know at what point I had my experience, but I assume it was one of those times that I flatlined. That would make sense to me. Who knows? So they stitched me back together. They pull me out of the surgery. I then have another few days where I'm in a coma and very, very out to it. I'm having this experience. I'm trying to connect, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here.
No, because this is crazy, because I was younger, but yeah, that was gone. They kept trying to bring me back, and then I was in a coma too. And it's crazy. Apparently we must need to be here.
Well, that was the first thing I thought when I woke up, was there is some purpose for my life. I've got some mission to do, and I'm gung-ho.
Yes.
I'm so involved with mission. I haven't got a clue what it is, but I'm trying to do it. And every, you know, I'm over here, then I'm over here, and I'm trying to fulfill that purpose.
You were in the coma how long?
I need to go back and check that for sure, but I believe it was 5 days.
Okay.
That I'm in the coma. Okay. So anyway, tracking back now that I've gone all around the place.
No, you're doing great. I'm following you. It's good.
Good. That's a bonus. I'm trying to connect with my father. I give everything because I think I'm going to literally give my life for this. It's so important. I throw every ounce of energy I've got into finding him, connecting with him, trying to squeeze his hand or however that looks. And then there's like this booming silent white light, which is not a thing in earthly terms, but it just happened. And I'm in this white light, and I'm looking around, and I'm still pretty confused. I'm in the moment. I'm just taking it all in, and there is singing and celebration, and it's just bliss. I've never felt anything like it here on earth, but I'm in this place, and I feel like there's waves of celebration coming in, and I'm just there loving it. And then I start to put my focus on what's immediately around me, because I'm just in this bliss state. And I notice that directly around me are some beings, and I'd say there was about 7 or 8 of them around me. No idea who they are, no idea what our connection was, but they were there for me. They weren't there for the next person that happened to come here. They knew I was coming, and they were there for me. They were welcoming me. They were cheering and clapping and so happy that I was there. And so I think, well, I don't know who these people are. Am I, what's going on here? It's all very confusing. So I try and focus in, and I'm trying to focus in on their features to see if I recognize any of them.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any features.
Mm-hmm.
They were just beings. They were, when I was 12 and I came back, I thought they were silhouettes. I'm like the silhouette people. That's the closest I can describe them. They were these people with no features. I wasn't permitted to see their features. They were human form, but silhouette, it's really hard to describe them. So anyway, I'm looking at them.
Bright. They're like,
no, they were
they bright but silhouettes of light?
Well, they were against a bright white light, like they were in the light, so
Oh,
they
I hear you.
weren't white.
Okay.
They weren't dark. They just were. I've never been asked that question. They just were. So hard to explain. So the more I try and focus in, the more I can't. And then I don't remember leaving. I don't remember traveling. So I never went through a tunnel. I never felt like I was flying or floating or anything like that. The next thing I know is I'm waking up and I'm in the critical care unit in Auckland Hospital. And there's tubes everywhere. There's beeps going off. And that's when I had that purpose, Tamara, of that idea of my life has a purpose. I'm back. I've got
Yes.
something to do.
Wow.
So yeah, who knows what that is.
I like that.
Well,
I'm back.
yeah.
You need a book. I'm back. Yeah.
Well, that was it. And
Powerful.
it was super powerful. And I knew that everything was going to be okay. I knew that this was the plan for my life and that I just it was kind of like, you can't even put it into comparison. But you know, when you go and do something, you're like, yes, I've done it. You complete an exam or you submit an assignment or a thesis or you achieve something really big. When I submitted my book to the printer or the editor, all these phases, I'm like, I did it. It kind of felt a little bit like that, like I was back, I did it. That was part of my journey, something I had to go through, and everything's going to be perfect.
Now, let me ask you, so when you came back and you were 12, you knew I'm supposed to be here. There's no doubts. Totally answer my question is why should I be here? There's a plan. What's interesting to me, you were talking about these 7 beings or what, however amount they were, but they were there for you. And there was so much love radiating from them. It's kind of cute. You want to be more curious. Oh, they're very, they're really here for me and they really care. It's all about me.
Yeah.
So you got curious, but you weren't allowed to investigate that any further because it was really it was not time yet, I guess.
Exactly. I wasn't allowed to know anything. So then I want to ask my dad, because my dad was alive at the time. I want to ask Dad, what was all that about, you squeezing my hand? And he hadn't been there squeezing my hand, because that was my logical explanation. That made sense to me. He hadn't been there doing that because it was too difficult for him. So he spent most of the time in the waiting room. Okay. This is not a negative thing. I totally understand it. Yeah. We were so close, my father and I, and there's a whole nother episode in that and talking about when he died, he came to see me, and there's a real spiritual connection, which I believe which is why I believe he was in my experience. So he actually couldn't handle what was happening. Didn't spend much time beside my bedside. But when I asked him, did you come in and sit with me and, tell me stories and ask me to squeeze your hand? He said, no, I didn't. But do you remember when so-and-so went in? And there was a family friend who was like the exception in critical care. You're supposed to only have your family. But because my parents struggled to deal with what was going on, they allowed this other very, very close family friend to come in and sit with me. And I have no memory of her, no memory at all of her coming in and sitting with me. And she told me all sorts of stories. And she said, oh, do you remember me coming? Did you hear anything when I was there? And I have nothing. I just have this one memory of being in this place of like the void, then the white light, the beings, and that's all I have. So I wake up and I've got this beautiful surgical scar. I'm still paralyzed. I'm potentially a little bit more paralyzed now after digging around having the surgery. Yes. And I just have this unwavering belief that everything is perfect. Everything is exactly how it needs to be. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of story in that because it was quite a traumatic time. Like I've got the positive view now, but don't get me wrong. When you wake up and you think, am I ever going to walk again? Am I ever going to live life? I was dribbling. I had no sensation. I was having seizures. There was so much going on and they hadn't fixed the problem. Because they had aborted the surgery. I still had to go through more surgery. They found later on that there were other tangles of blood vessels in my head. So there was now more than the one. Oh. There was all of these things. So it isn't a pure happy story, but I've learnt so much through it. And it's been the greatest gift. I think, when I die, if I do come back, if I reincarnate again, I'm not going to have this body that doesn't work properly, and I'm not going to have that experience and all these funny things. And I think I'm so lucky for what I went through. And yet, I don't know. I mean, that sounds crazy, right?
No, the whole thing is, you can just see there's so many layers even within that. So Okay, so they couldn't do, they had to, so you were in this coma. They probably
Yeah.
put you in a induced coma so you could recover.
Yeah.
And that's what they do sometimes with children. And so how much longer before you went back to have the second surgery?
So this is the thing. They realized that I could never have that second surgery because I wouldn't survive it. So now it was a question of what do we do?
Yeah.
I was literally a walking time bomb. So I went from competitive gymnast, bouncing around the house, I'd walk around the house on my hands. I just could not sit still. I went from that active child to somebody who was told, you're a walking time bomb. You can't do anything to raise your blood pressure or your heart rate. And, that raised my heart rate just thinking about it. It's so hard. So I literally had to just sit very still and not get excited. I'm quite an excited person. Not get excited, not move, let everybody do everything for me. I mean, I couldn't walk or anything anyway. So going from that place of very independent to completely dependent. And then, by the time I was going to high school, which is a very prominent age, I suppose, for learning about who you are, what you want to be, how you want your life to be, that's where you start to get your friends groups and your perceptions on the world and how life is going to be. So when I started high school, this is a year later, everybody's going off to the camp and I'm literally going off to hospital appointments. And I still can't do full days at school and things like this. So there was a whole lot that went on, but every day I was just thinking, I've got to do something with my life. I've got to make this better. I've got to, I don't know, do something. And I was hanging on to this near-death experience. I hadn't told anybody. I was terrified of it.
I mean, back, especially just a few years ago, right? 10, 20, 30 years ago, who would you tell?
Well, I thought I'd tell my family, if anybody, but I kind of didn't want to. It was too personal. I was scared.
Yeah.
What do you do with an experience like that? I was only 12. What did I know?
Well,
yeah,
you
these
want to be
things.
invalidated. We were talking about the pre-show. Everybody's like, we want to join the pre-show.
I know.
we did some talking, but I was chicken shit, and I said Kirsty was too, because I didn't want anyone to invalidate something so soulful, intimate. I didn't want anyone to invalidate it, and because I wanted to hold on to it, so I didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, I hadn't worked it out. I hadn't understood it, and so I didn't want to half talk about something that I hadn't got a grasp on, because how do you explain an experience like that? Was I crazy? Was it the drugs? Was it the lights in the operating theatre? Was all these questions, and yet I just knew that it happened. I knew it was real. I knew that everything was right. I had a very open spiritual connection now. So the first place I wanted to go when I could walk and leave the house, I wanted to go straight to church. I wanted to go to church and I wanted to pray, and I wanted to pray really hard, and I wanted to understand.
How'd that work
exactly
out when you showed up with all these questions to the church?
Well, what do you do, right? Especially when you're that age. So I went along to the local youth group. My best friend at the time went with me. And we're in there, and I couldn't handle it. I could not be in the room. It was just too much. I went outside, and I remember standing up the driveway of the car park for the church and just standing there and going, well, here I am. What do I do? Sure, I believe in you, God. I've kind of seen you. I've seen something. There's no doubting that. Where do I go from here? And did a little pledge of, I've given my life to you. You're my life of purpose. What do I do with this? Mm-hmm. And I had no answers. I had nothing, but I felt so much better for going to that place. So then what I did, because all I knew.
You felt what going to that place?
I'd been to that place of submission of.
Got it.
I'm giving you everything. I will do anything to live out my purpose, to help the world, whatever it is I need to be doing. Okay. Here I am, use me, kind of putting my hand up type scenario. I'm standing in a car park. It's pitch black. I'm standing out there by myself while everybody else is inside. So then anyway, went home that night, and that was the start of a very interesting church journey, which took me so far, but never connected me with what I'd experienced. Mm-hmm. So it was like, I can't even explain it. The church was the only thing I knew that was even slightly close to what I'd experienced. So that's where I went there first. That's what I wanted to do. But it didn't quite carry me where I can't even explain it. But what I realized is that my experience didn't fit into the church. It was too big. It didn't fit into anything. It didn't fit into a box whatsoever.
And neither do you.
I still haven't. Yeah, exactly. And I still haven't told a single person about my experience. And we're talking years and years. So I only started talking about my own personal experience this year. It took 27 years.
I feel honored.
I know. Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes I'm still scared most of the time. Like right now, I'm like, really, are we doing this?
No, this is beautiful because I mean, really, I'm listening to this and I said, here's this precious, vulnerable little 12-year-old who you were already asking questions, right? Spiritual questions before that. And then, and boy, did you get your answers. And look at you now. And I mean, you still are that same energetic, full of energy person, so beautiful, so full of life. But, you wonder, and I don't know if people have asked you this, they've asked me, but why do you think certain people go through near-death experiences like this? And if so, because there is some pain and emotional, physical involved, and anguish. Why is it that you think that certain people go through this, and what did you gain from that? Because there was something that you gained.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I love this question. It's one that I almost always ask the guests that come onto my show because I'm fascinated by it. I want to understand whether we programmed this in before we came. Do we choose this? Is it an exit point in our life? So many questions, but I don't know the answer. I think
just take a stab at it. There's no wrong answer. I don't care. Just
exactly. There are no wrong answers.
There's no right or wrong. You're not, who cares? So just, what do you personally think?
I think that we potentially go through these experiences to draw us closer to our purpose, to our spirit, to what is needed to raise, it's not even the vibration of the world, but to bring more goodness. It's to connect with that purpose. I think it's
back to the love.
Yeah, it comes back to the love for sure. It's like a reminder. It's almost like we've gone off track and it just brings us back on track. But at 12 years old, how off track could I have been? Like, I don't know. I ask this question all the time. I can't have been that off track.
If you don't mind me here, and I don't believe in a value.
Yeah, go for it.
As long as everybody's, experience is totally their own and different. But I have a different way of looking at it. Instead of, not that you were off track, is that you were so incredibly special already and uniquely asking questions like the people you met at the church. And I did that route too. I don't, nothing against it. They just didn't, it was like, I knew a foreign language they didn't, and it's not their fault, but you were so more advanced spiritually, just in the questions and this kind of thing, that I think these things are sacred. I think they're
absolutely.
sacred.
Absolutely.
Do people wish to be brain surgery or to be put in a body cast no, but we don't also know, and I don't know what you think here. I mean, we're just throwing stuff out. I mean, I don't know. I know life is eternal. I know, like you said, if this doesn't work, or if you want to be a little taller, you can get another model. That's fine. But you wonder, it's not so much what you did. I think it's always the soul's journey. And maybe our soul didn't require that back then. And it's funny because, I just look at this, and I don't want to move too far away, from this, but I want to kind of expand this thought about this process about near-death experiencers. But it's just like this whole, isolation, being home, and the COVID and blah, blah, blah. Not saying it's not real. That's not what I'm saying. But, it's been hopefully an eye-opener to people about how they do business, how their relationships, how they spend their time. how they do self-care or not. And then there are others that are acting exactly like they did before. And they're not getting it. Now we know once they cross over, they'll get it. They'll have, they'll have people there talking, they'll work it out. But I think that now, in my opinion, and I don't know how this works, but I do feel like we agree to certain things. We might agree to humility. Yeah. We might agree to, yes, I want a spiritual awakening. We don't know what the lesson is. We don't know, like with mine, sexual abuse. Did I agree to that? Hell no. But guess what? Now, if there's people that are abused or victimized, I have great compassion. I have great understanding, and I'm not thrown off, and it's made me stronger. And the other way to look at it is we do live kind of forever. So it's not like we truly get hurt. Although I don't like pain, I'm not into it, but I'm not really, it's not my thing. But I think that on some level we agree to learning certain things. We just don't know what that lesson is. But look where you are now. Look at you. Look at this incredible person you are. I mean, you would have always been an incredible person, but you took it the way it should have been, as important.
Yeah, absolutely. And like what I said is I woke up and I felt like everything was perfect. Everything had gone to plan. I couldn't do the work that I'm doing now if I hadn't had the experience. I wouldn't be as focused on spiritual things. I wouldn't be as open if I hadn't had the experience. So I think some people get given gifts. Some people get given experiences, get given things in their life that help them and enable them to do what they need to do to make the world a better place. Some of us need that shake up to come off track. So when I was talking about coming off track, I don't think I'd done anything to be off track by 12 years old, but I do think that this was always going to happen for me. And that has enabled so many other things within my life that I could fulfill them. And for some people, maybe it's not a near-death experience. Maybe they've got this amazing talent and they just need a bit of a shake-up to use their talent or to connect with people, or, we've all got things in our life. And why do they happen to some people and not others? I don't have the answer, but I think it's all about connecting back to love, back to source, back to why am I here? What is my purpose? What do I need to do? What's my piece in this giant puzzle we called life? And how can I give something back?
Well, it's interesting. I agree with you 100%. And when you were saying to God, when you had that conversation in the parking lot and you said, I'm here, I surrender. I did that a couple times. I did that when I was in a youth group in college, and they were nice, but they were, I'm like, okay, this isn't working. I mean, and I remember at that point, like at that point, and then later on in life in my 20s, I did it again, and I would go to this, it was strange, in a printing company, and they had this Pentecostal, and he was a seer. He was this African-American guy. And I ended up going to an African-American church for a long time. It was a lot of fun. They just stand up.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And they start singing. I'm like, my God, what are they doing?
Wow.
I'm like, wow, they really are expressive. I really like these people here. And and it was funny, but and it's funny now because he's a seer, so am I. But he was definitely connected to God, and incredible, loving people. And it was, and it got me to the next step. And you think, what's the next step? And what's the next step? And then you look at you here now, to be able to share and to communicate with other people that have had near-death experiences. I mean, I have to tell you, Kirsty, people don't understand. It's very difficult to talk about it, especially when you first start talking about it. And it takes a lot of chutzpah to do that, and courage. And you are able to display that, because if you're like me, you know the bigger picture. This message is bigger than me and you. Life goes on. We are so loved. God, there is a plan where God, the creator, whatever, is in charge. There is a system to things, and everybody counts. I always say everybody's here at this exact time. There is no mistake, because if God didn't want you here, you'd be out of here. That you haven't finished. Therefore, people say, what's my purpose? I find, after doing lots of readings and talking to people and interviews, I think it's the same. It is, we are a self-expression, and we co-create, hopefully, with God. We are self-expression of that love on the other side. So people express that different ways. Some people do it through cooking. Some people do it through music. Some people do it through encouragement, or like you do with your podcast and talking with people. And so we are a self-expression of love. And if we're not lined up with whatever our special gift is, could be working with the dying, could be whatever. If we're not lined up using that self-expression and not participating in that, that's when we're most unhappy. But it's expressed differently through people, but it's the same thing. And, you know, I always say, what did Jesus say? He wanted heaven on earth in the Lord's Prayer. And so isn't that bringing the love that's, I find, more there than here? Not that I'm encouraging people to check out early, because there's no shortcuts. But that, are we not supposed to bring it here?
Absolutely. And I so think that if we just take the time to connect to our moments, connect to ourselves, who we are, what we're doing with our life, we'll understand a little bit more about what our piece is, what is our mission that we need to do, where do we fit into all of this. And then that feeds back into living consciously, living in a very open, loving way. It comes back to love. Love is the most important thing, I think. I think it all comes back to love. But that feeds into the way we will live our life, having no regrets, addressing things, understanding what we're doing. It's really a huge message of being connected consciously and connected to a bigger thing than what we are, putting our head down. And it looks like different things for different people.
It is.
You know, we can never judge, we can never understand what someone else is going through or what their part of the puzzle is. Maybe their part is to put a lot of pressure on us, to be really tough on us. Maybe it's to give us an experience which isn't so pleasant, because that's going to aid our growth, which means that we can then go into our place that we need to be standing in to make things better on a universal stage, I suppose. So there's so much. It does all come back to love for me, though. That is the key thing. And that's the message that I see through all of the interviews that I've done. It comes back to love. Love is the biggest thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that when you really reflect upon, you know, Jesus always tells me, that's who I saw in a couple of mine, but he says, be love. Well, first of all, how do you be love? I mean, you really think about it. How do you be love? Well, you're kind to people. You cut them grace. If someone says something, say, well, you know, they just didn't understand. I mean, you think, what is it to be love? The next thing is give love. See, I'm great at that. Yeah, I'm a hugger. But receive love, oh, that's hard on me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, and I struggle with that too. The self-love piece is so hard. Yeah.
And that seems silly, but I feel like that some of us are better at those three: be love, give love, receive. Which one? You know, it's easier just to give love and, hi, how's it going? What do you need? No problem. But when you're in that place that you need help, or you need so-and-so in a place of vulnerability, or someone just wants to tell you, you know, you're important, you're loved, what you're doing is so valid. It's hard to receive that. Don't you agree?
Exactly.
The self-love.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah.
So
the self-love piece is really hard.
I mean, when you think about love, I mean, it sounds like a, you know, like a hippie thing, but it really, if you think about, you break it down, and love is also communicating and interacting with people that aren't pleasant.
Exactly.
How was that? Difficult.
Totally.
Sometimes.
It comes back. Yeah, it's really difficult. It just comes back to love, and love, it creates so much change, and we might not even see it. The smallest things just create the biggest change, and I love that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my mission, is to be more loving, to share more love, learning to love myself more, and be in that place where I believe I'm playing my part. I'm sticking to my purpose. And
no, you're absolutely doing it. And, you know,
doing what we can.
I'll have things show up now and then that have, more so in the past, that have tried to take me off my purpose. But I realized that since the age of about, well, before that, but let's just say 13 consciously, I've been obsessed with this topic. And so it's somewhat of a no-brainer that I would, be involved with being more spiritual and trying to help people. And I get to learn along the way too. But I think this is who we truly are. And I think that any part of the fear that someone may have, I don't think it's legitimate. I mean, it's coming from a place of less than, because when you talk to people in near-death experiencers, it's not that. It's really about the love and learning why you're here. Yeah. Jesus told me something back in March, and I said, wow, that's good. Of course, he's Jesus.
You're surprised?
And I'm like, that is good. I'm going to use that. Can I use that? He goes, yeah, that's fine. And he said, be the love you were created to be. Now, if you really meditate on that, okay, Lord, all right, I'm going to be the love I was created to be. That might mean, and we were talking about it pre-show, I might have to talk about things I'm uncomfortable with. I might have to show a side of myself that maybe is not very loving or pleasant, or it could be, vulnerable, I don't know about that. And when you truly are being authentic and being the love, you're also letting down your defenses, which if you trust God and your angels and Team God, the whole bit, you have a staff over there helping you here. Not to mention your guides, your elders, and all that. It's about trust, but to really be that, it's a little scary. It's a lot easier to put on a mask and to walk out and say the things people do, but to live authentically like you are, you have to know that it's teaching other people to be who they truly are, and that they can have the courage to take their mask off. And I can say that because here we are in October, it's almost Halloween, to take their mask off and to just be, right? What does that mean, just to be? Yeah. That means some days you have a good day, some days you're sad, some days you wake up and you go, God, I look terrible. God, let me throw some up on this. There's other days like, it's okay. But we're not perfect. But I think that in the imperfectness is where the beauty is, because if we live real and real with ourselves, then we don't have to have our ass shaken up like something dramatic. Because I don't know about you, but when you're dealing with God and Team Heaven, if you don't learn your lesson, and I'm not talking about near-death experience, it could be anything. If you don't learn your lesson, then the bigger one comes, and then a bigger one comes. So I'm listening. Yes. Do you feel that way?
Yeah. I totally do. And so the voice that I talked about at the very beginning when I was in the bedroom was saying, don't go to sleep. I often get a voice very similar to this. I'm yet to understand whether it's the same voice. I don't know, but it tells me to do things. And like you said, if I don't do it, then I'm going to get a harder challenge. And I'm trying to grow the voice. I'm trying to really listen, because it's never let me down. It's never led me astray. It's the one thing that got me doing the podcast that I'm doing. It spoke to me and said, do this, go and interview people, do video interviews and interview people. And I was so scared. And now it's my favorite thing. And I'm like, thank goodness I listened to the voice.
You're good.
I know. But do you know what? The voice can also say, I'll be walking down the road and there might be, I don't know, some rubbish or some dog do or something on the side of the road, and it says, pick it up. And I'm going, oh no, I don't have time for the voice right now, but it's the same voice. I've got to learn to listen to it. And I'm trying to train myself to be a little bit quicker to respond, because like you say, if you don't respond, it's going to come back. It's going to come back with something harder. It's going to come back with a bigger lesson. And if we just keep putting our head down and following what feels good for us and what's easy,
it won't work.
I do think that's when we have the wake up calls, the crisis moments, the accidents, the illnesses, the relationship blow ups, all these things that happen is when we aren't connected. So you talk about the voice. I love the voice, and then I really don't like the voice at all.
Well, it's funny, and I have to say, a lot of, and I want to make this point, a lot of near-death experiencers, they open, if you want, in my opinion, they open like a portal, if you would call it, a dimension. Okay. Now it's available to everybody. Then that's your connection to God. That's a birthright. Where we co-create with God, which is our creator. And people say, what's that? I don't want to go on to that, but it's there. It exists. The source, the one, whatever. but we have a connection. What a lot of people don't realize, a near-death experiencer are constantly getting information, but other people are too. We're just maybe a little bit more aware of it, but it's not like I go, hey, Tamara, hey, can so-and-so, it's not always that way, but sometimes I will pray and I'll meditate and I'll be still and I'll say, I'll put, I need help with this, or can you make me more aware of this? What should I be doing to help you more, or whatever it is. And sometimes it's quiet for a spell, but I just sit and wait, which is totally different than before. How I used to do it in the past. I would, rush along, put plans together. Now I go into a state of surrender and ask, and then I wait for the answer. But sometimes I do that. I was told to do this. And it was so funny because Jesus said, do this. He said, you'll be known for this. I said, you got to be kidding with the Bigfoot and all this stuff here. And he goes, yeah. I said, really? This is kind of a joke, right? And he's like, because I've done like better stuff. I mean, well, I don't know, so someone's opinion, but he said, no. And I think it's, and I, sometimes things aren't revealed to us. And I think it's because it always comes down to this, it's living authentically. So whatever that is, whether it's a course room, a podcast, whatever that we feel that we can live more authentically and encourage everybody else to live more authentically. So, but I am told things, but it's not like every day. And sometimes they tell me things I don't like to hear.
Yeah, hello. I hear you on that. And also our purpose, we're talking about all these things that we could be doing. It might be to live authentically. We actually need to get out and we need to go to that really high stress 9-to-5 job. Well, it's not even 9-to-5 these days, is it? That stressful corporate job and hustle with all the people in the ties and the suits. And maybe that's actually us being authentic. So it looks really different in different environments, different scenarios for different people. We can't think to be authentic is all about sitting in lotus position, meditating. I'm very much a doer as well as, I want to be, and I'm very focused on connecting. But
well, you're
there's
right.
still things that we have to do.
And the other, the whole aspect of meditating, you can be folding laundry or just when you have a downtime, you don't really need a lot of brainwaves doing that. You know what I mean? You're not doing a math equation. You could be in a meditative state doing that, or feeding the animals, or, hopefully not driving a car. And it doesn't have to be for hours on end. Sometimes I visualize the bright light of that light we talked about encompassing over my head and go on down. I do this little exercise and I do it really quick. So just kind of like a shower of light. It doesn't have to be whatever. It could be in the shower as a good form of meditation. You rinse off the day. I visualize that being the Holy Spirit and the bright light. So it doesn't have to be like, 30 minutes or 2 hours. Some people
definitely. And I'm so glad
they don't have the time. I
don't have the time.
I am really, and I'm working on it. Okay. But I'm usually kind of, look, it's my problem, but I have problems with being impatient. Sometimes I'm like, hurry, come on, next, let's go. And even though I don't show it to people, but it's just not really about anything in particular. It's just that I just want to get on with things. And that's one of the things that I personally have to work on. So when I meditate, I had to do a course once, one of the courses they said, we want you to meditate for 4 hours. I'm like, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
4 hours. Can you sit still 4 hours? My rear hurts too.
No, exactly. Yeah. But that might be great for someone.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So don't think one thing fits everybody. And certainly the near-death experiences, they're all very different. I think you don't have to have one. People by nature, you're spiritual, and you could have a spiritual experience or something that touches your heart. And I think the big thing is to connect however you do that. And I'm not speaking derogatory about church or this. I love church people. That's fine. It's just that me at that time, and I just had to keep on my journey. But I think God presents that. It's like people are here, but then He'll present a new group of people, and then He'll present a new group of people, and then He'll, so there are things that are answered to us, and not exactly. And sometimes people brought to us that are difficult, but it's part of the lesson too. So it's all part of the journey and developing our character and our awareness.
Absolutely. And it never ends. I think it keeps going right till we die, basically. We've got to allow that learning to keep happening and focus in on what we can do while we're meant to be here, and love as hard as we can.
Love hard. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Love hard.
Love super
wait a minute.
hard.
A book here for you. Wait a minute. You know, it was a slogan copywriter. Live, yes, this is love hard, live something, live expressively. I'm going to just give that one to you. That is good. That is you, because you were like a pistol. You were just, you're ready to go, you know, and you know, nothing could slow you down too long. So you have been a joy. I would love for you to come back and to talk about different things. There's so many things that we talked about being a celebrant, but how to celebrate life now. You know, what is end of life? You know, that's very fascinating. And I also know that you've got a lot of things going on now. I don't know if you have any courses or any projects going on. Do you want to tell everybody what you're up to these days? Because I would love for them to be involved with your community.
Yeah, thank you. So my main thing is my podcast. That's the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. That's the one that the voice told me to go and do. I hadn't even shared my own experience publicly at that point. That is at letstalkneardeath.com. There's a community behind there. It's a free community, but it's also one where you can help to keep the lights running, because it's as you'll know, Tamara, there's quite a lot that goes into putting out the episodes.
A lot.
I do some different coaching. I do life coaching. I do death coaching, and they're the same thing, but a different side of the coin, which is really interesting. I have a dying well program. So the thing that I was talking about in the beginning of when my father died, and we were like, what do we do?
Yeah.
How do you write your funeral before you go? This is in my dying well program. So it's a holistic view at death. So it looks at the practical elements. What are your thoughts around death, spiritually, emotionally? What about love? What about heirlooms? It just covers a whole lot of different things. I teach, like you said, I teach podcasting because that is my number one thing.
Yeah.
I also help people to publish their books. So yeah, you're saying that I do a whole lot of things. I do a whole lot of things. And it's really quite hard when people say, what do you do? I'm like, oh, what do I say? I'm all about storytelling. So I do public speaking where I share my story publicly. I do workshops and teach people things like that. But then I'm all about sharing of other stories. So whether that is through podcast interviews, writing a book, writing a blog, all these types of things. So anything to do within that storytelling realm really is where I jump in, but just want to love and support people and help people to be the best that they can be. And for me, sharing stories is so super important. So
absolutely.
There's a whole lot there.
Well, you're you know, talking about you're teaching people how to be their authentic self. And when you look at your story, some of them are kind of funny in life, and we shouldn't be so darn serious, because some of them are quite funny, the things that happen. Now, tell people how to get a hold of you, and we're going to have the links. But if they go to your website, will they be able to get to all these other portals of all these?
Yeah, exactly. You can just put in my name into Google and I'll show up in a few different places. But my website is kirstysalisbury.com, and the podcast communities over at letstalkneardeath.com. So they're the main places. Put in my name, you'll find me all over the place. Like I say, I do a few different things, so I'll show up.
Yeah, so you know, it's so cute because you're talking about how you were here and you're in your hands, and you were, you know, you're walking around on your hands, and you're doing this and you're doing that, and I'm thinking, what's changed? You're not on your hands anymore.
I do it one-handed now.
Yeah. Oh, you do?
So I was playing netball. I don't know if you have that. It's kind of like basketball over there. I ripped the tendon on my thumb, so that's why I'm wearing this brace. But this hand doesn't actually work very well. So I do everything one-handed. I type one-handed. I run around. I do everything one-handed. So I don't walk on my hands because that's a bit harder one-handed. But I'm still in the gym. I still do. I do CrossFit training, which is a miracle considering I used to be paralyzed in a hospital bed.
It is a miracle.
And I do it really badly with no weight on the bar. And I'm always like that person who needs to substitute nearly everything in a workout. But I do what I can do. And it all comes back to the little things. What can I do today to improve my life?
You know,
and what can I do that I can? What am I able to do? So
you are.
Yeah, I'm still gung ho. Just do it one-handed.
Kirsty, you are an inspiration. Anyone complaining, look at you. I mean, look at you. And we don't talk about these things, how, this didn't work just quite right, this body, or blah, 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 or these things are going on, but we carry on anyway. And I think that people don't, I've been very honored to talk to you a couple times and be on your show and know how genuine you truly are. But guys, it's a lot of work putting these things together, and we do this for free out of the love of our heart, so we can share in our way. This is our love. This is our cooking of a fried chicken dinner, which is terribly bad for you. But this is our way of showing love. And, please try to support all the people like me, including me. You can like and subscribe, but and subscribe. Kirsty Salisbury's, her channel that she has with her podcast, and you can be a part of her community. And I also like that you're doing you're teaching the podcast and writing your books and whatever, because there's newbies coming out every day that have had transformative spiritual experiences, near-death experiences, or whatever, that they want to, I've got to write this. I don't care if it's a Bigfoot story or whatever. They want to write this. They want to document it. And they're very intimidated. And most people are intimidated to write anyway. It's like English class. Yeah. And then you've got all this technology. Well, how do you do a blog? Well, how do you do this? And it really is quite daunting. Because then you have to, edit the show, blah, blah, and promote it. And then, or if it's the book, you got to, then you've got to, how are you going to upload it on to the Kindle or the Barnes and Noble or whatever it is.
And it's so much easier to say I won't do it, but I don't want that. I want people to do it.
That's right. And that's why we have people like you. So if you're one of those people, we're here to help. I mean, Kirsty's offering this, and so we already know someone here. And we do have a lovely community of people that we do try to, if we personally don't do it, we do refer people out like yourself to help someone get that book out or get that podcast. So you're an incredible joy. I look forward to doing other things with you. I know we will. And
absolutely.
You're absolutely a delight. And
thank you, Tamara. I've so enjoyed being on here. Thank you. It's just been a pleasure to come on and chat, and time's gone just like that. And I laughed so hard at the beginning of the show. So thank you.
Good. We're a little nervous about that near-death experience, but hey.
I never like sharing it.
You did great. It was like a breeze. You did fantastic.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, it's wonderful. I've so enjoyed today. Thank you so much.